Ministério da Cultura e a Associação Casa Azul apresentam 23ª FLIP, Festa Literária Internacional de Paraty. A FLIP conta com o benefício da Lei Federal de Incentivo à Cultura, Lei Rouanet, PRONAC 235060, e possui acessibilidade para pessoas com deficiências física, visual e auditiva. Tem patrocínio Jequitibá do Nubank. Patrocínio Figueira da Vale. Patrocínio Guapuruvu do Itaú e da Motiva, por meio do seu instituto. Patrocínio Cedro do Sesc, da MAC Móveis e de O Globo. Patrocínio Araribá, da Globo Livros. Apoio institucional da Prefeitura de Paraty, Governo do Estado do Rio de Janeiro, IFAM, Instituto do Patrimônio Histórico e Artístico Nacional e Museu do Território. É uma criação e realização Associação Casa Azul e Ministério da Cultura, Governo Federal, Brasil, União e Reconstrução. FLIP, o encontro da literatura com a cidade.
A cultura é um dos mais preciosos instrumentos de democracia. É um canal de expressão plural que permite a convivência de diferentes vozes, histórias e visões de mundo. E por isso a cultura, tal qual a democracia, deve ser defendida e fortalecida. Essa é a função da Lei Rouanet, a principal política pública de incentivo à cultura brasileira. Com ela, perseguimos a missão de assegurar o acesso democrático à produção e à difusão cultural. Ao longo de mais de 3 décadas, a Rouanet permitiu que inúmeras iniciativas culturais, antes inviáveis, ganhassem o mundo. Revelou histórias, preservou tradições e transformou vidas. Lei Rouanet, há 33 anos, tornando a cultura brasileira mais plural, acessível e democrática.
Casal de dançarinos se olham sorridentes. Uma banda orquestrada para de tocar. Logos: Lei Rouanet, Ministério da Cultura, Governo Federal, Brasil, União e Reconstrução.
Onde tem cultura, a Vale está. No poder criativo que nasce dos palcos, orquestras, das artes, das ruas e dos museus. Na valorização das diversas identidades brasileiras e na preservação de memórias. É valorizando a cultura que crescemos e evoluímos juntos. Instituto Cultural Vale.
brasileiro não sabe ser pequeno. É da nossa natureza mover a vida como gigantes. Por isso a CCR, maior empresa de infraestrutura e mobilidade do Brasil, está movendo a sua marca para um novo momento. A CCR agora é Motiva. Mais do que estradas, trilhos e aeroportos movendo o Brasil. Uma marca que já nasce gigante como você. Motiva. Você nos move.
E Nhaderu deixou pobrecinho no sítio. Não deixou por escrito, não deixou dinheiro para nós. Aqui eu tenho 2 vezes no ano minha festa, em Mogarai. Batizar semente para plantar. Semente que veio, Nhaderu mandou para nós, colheita de planta, outra festa, mês de janeiro. Aí o pajé vai dar nome indígena. Se não tem esse milho indígena, ele não tem como dar nome indígena para criança. A terra não é do Juruá. A terra é nossa. Nhaderu deixou para nós.
Following us on internet, online. I'm Mauro Munhoz, the artistic director of Flip. White man, I am 6 feet tall. I have short brown hair. I wear eyeglasses. I'm wearing black trousers and a blue jacket. It's a huge source of joy to meet here to begin the 23rd Flip. And when we come to Paraty, as soon as we get here, when activated and mobilized by Flip, we realize something unique. We are immersed in an experience, a different experience of a town. Time flows in at a more human pace, and our sense of urgency changes, creating a place to think and to feel true priorities. Flip is the meeting of literature with the town. Literature and urban planning are 2 human inventions which have a lot in common, beginning with the challenge of sustaining collective life. Literature allows us to access others' gaze. The town is a place where we live with one another. Reading and writing are ways of inhabiting and building the collective experience. The town, the city, is the way that we human beings read and write ourselves on the world. We inscribe ourselves, thinking a world where so much is written and much less is read, but we build so much to the extent that the possibilities for inhabiting are increasingly limited, constrained. When writers in the main program come up onto this stage to meet with you, it's not a plot or a script. What exists in the format of the round tables is a series of projects to back the sensitivity and the strength, the force of conversations that flow naturally here on the stage. The experience of being here in Flip, it has to be first and foremost pleasurable. With each Flip, residents and visitors cohabit a city transformed by literature and languages of urbanism, provoking us, it makes us restless and transform us. The experience of being here at Flip is unique. Part of the pleasure of reading is in the measure of unpredictability that the stories bear for their readers. In the two cases, unpredictability, unforeseeability is brought here, after which we can back it and support it, sustain it. What happens here in the present in a way that is sustained by a lot of work behind the scenes. To take a largest number of person to this enchantment of literature is essential for Flip. This year, we believe in the power of Paulo Leminski's work to open the doors to the pleasure that literature provides in a way both easy, surprising, and profound. The pleasure of being here in person in the midst of people who share the same interests, who are open and willing to reflect and engage in dialogue on these 5 days of the festival is like a breath of fresh air in the social fabric, which is accelerated, virtual, and challenging increasingly. And the cycle of the author that's with tribute 4 weeks ago in Sao Paulo, I learned with Wisnik that our Paulo Leminski, the honored author, in his literary oeuvre to combine two different aspects that are apparently contradictory. The concentration and deconcentration, both. Immediately I remembered something which happens here at Flip. I remembered then the Nobel Award Coetzee was here in 2007, and he commented in public the degree to which he was amazed and impressed with the concentration of this lecture. And this is very interesting for us to reflect on, that this happens when Flip is a place for pleasure and relaxation and entertainment, like the manifestations and the festivals, the festivities that emerge legitimately from collective life. And in this, Flip is similar to Leminsky. The educational division of Flip is presenting to children and young people and also to the adults the pleasure, the transformative pleasure of reading. And over the course of these 23 years, it has been creating generations of readers who have in literature a basic source of support. The Flip phenomenon emerges organically from many different collective spaces. One of them has the fundamental role that the team working throughout the entire year, researching, documenting, and interpreting and producing integrated languages which build the singularity of this experience. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts to the town government here, the city government, to the state government of Rio de Janeiro, the Ministry of Culture, IFAM, which has a fundamental role, the Heritage Institute. Thank you also to the organizations and company that sponsors, support us, and that acknowledge the reputation and the relevance of our trademark, and whose support is indispensable. It's indispensable for the perennity of Flip as an institution. We want to thank the local network of inns and hotels, bars, restaurants, the partner institutions who support the festival in various different ways and who are a fundamental part of this experience. To the veritable hosts of the festival, to the Paraty population, its local organizations, thank you very much indeed for your welcoming support, participation, and generosity, and your hospitality. In addition to the main program, which is happening around this town square, which are the fundamental axis together with the educational program of this festival, we have various different parallel programs which have expanded to other spaces in the town, enriching the experience as a whole. We were looking, there are more than 600 activities that are going to take place in these 5 days. More than 600. The Flip Plus program in partnership with other institutions, the whims and relaxivities with poetry, the Flip bookstore, on the expanded town square on the other side of the river, and the partner houses identified with the banners of Flip, each of them with its own program. free cultural program and independently here from the main program. All of this set is part of this pro network comprising the Flip experience inside these more than 600 activities that are going to be taking place here in 5 days. I want to call forward to the stage now Ana Lima Cecilio, who organized this fabulous program, this fabulous literary program in the 23rd edition of Flip. Ana Lima Cecilio, the curator. Good evening, Paraty. Welcome one and all. Thank you very much, Mauro Munhoz. I missed all of you guys. Thank you, Mauro, and actually thank you a million times over for the chance to be here in this place. These last days, some people were asking me if we're going to have the second Flip. It's easier, harder, because I curated last year. I gave them horrible answers, and I apologized to the journalists. And now I thought to myself, it's because I don't think it's that difficult. This work is one of the most joyous and pleasurable things that I've ever done in my life. And if it was that easy and so good last year, this year is because we have a team, an unbelievable team here. I've never seen so many people in love with what they do, in love with Flip, for this auditorium, the design, the conversations that take place here. So I would like to begin by thanking the Flip team, everyone, each one and all, each and every one. So it's not effort that they made, it's collective force, not effort. It's unbelievable. And I would also like to thank all of the authors, the interviewers who are going to be at the center of the conversations here on the stage, and to say that it's thanks to the books that they've written and that their thoughts that they've had, that they are actually the dancers in this festival, and they're our direction and our source of joy. To thank everyone who makes this festival happen. I'm going to read a poem by Leminsky, which goes like this. My friends, when they hold hands, they leave something else for me. Presence, a gaze, recollection, warmth. My friends, when they give me, they leave their own hand in mine. It's with everyone's hand doing this that we make this festival. Holding hands and joining hands together to make the festival happen. In addition to this incredible team, I would like to thank from the bottom of my heart Paulo Leminski and the adorable figures of Lisa Ruiz, Laura Leminsky, and Estrela Leminsky Ruiz, Paulo Leminski's family. I want to thank them for being the spokespersons for this amazing work, this essential work to understand a period in Brazil which is so transformative for so many people. Thank you very much for being so kind, infinitely kind. Whims and Relaxities is the name of the first book by Leminsky, and I heard Alice say in the tribute that it's the one that grasps life because it's true. It's a solar, musical, sonorous, joyous book, festive, which is what we want Flip to be, because it has a whim, which is the effort by all people that build this festival, but there's also relaxities, never in the sense of carelessness or neglect, but much in the sense of fun, entertainment, joy, and relaxation. Although Leminsky is a well-known poet and dear poet to us Brazilians, I envy people who are reading him for the first time. If you read his poetry, you discover that his poetry is generous, loving. Leminsky makes us understand that language and languages, that words have a character, that the phrases create expectations to break what is expected from a phrase is to practice philosophy, that rhyme is building meaning, that rhythm produces irony, but there's lapses, limericks, haikai, puns. He lets us understand that what we have first in life, which is language, is the maximum source of intelligence, invention, and fun. Leminsky and Flip give us this present. May he give us this present. Let's all have a great Flip, a great festival, everybody. Before we call Arnaldo Antunes out on the stage, we're all anxious to hear Leminsky is going to give us a message now on the screen. two lovers looking at the sky. Came to the same conclusion. Although the earth is not given to war, thus it was worth it. It was worth it to glimpse all this through humans and the choices that I always make. It was worth it to face life, which could have been better. It was worth it. It was worth it. Good evening. First of all, I want to thank Flip for inviting me to share this evening with you all, and especially to Ana Cecília, who invited me in person, and to say that I was extremely happy with the choice of Paulo Leminski receiving the tribute as the Brazilian author who receives the tribute from Flip this year, because of this meaning a recognition and acknowledgement of his multiple powerful work, his oeuvre, in a sense, and it tells of my great admiration for his poetry. This Zen Nago Polak, who in some sense moves between so many different universes and different, very naturally, so freely. Leminsky, in a sense, he was a link between culture and counterculture, or as he expressed in the title of one of his books, Caprices and Relaxities. At the same time, he makes sayings whimsical and relaxed. At the same time, he expounded easily and freely on poetry in various different times, languages, and cultures, different ones, and translated from various different languages into Portuguese. He was an example of erudition without conceit, bringing from the classics what was vital, what continues to tell us something today from the classics, and always a libertarian in his form and content, in a sense, an encounter between formal experimentation with the direct colloquial discourse, and this attrition and friction, it all became pacified. I believe that Leminsky, when I learned of his poetry, it was like a piece that fit between concrete poetry and tropicalia, which were already, in a sense, connected before in the relationship between Augusto and Caetano, Augusto Campos, Balanço da Poça, Dias and Pulse are present in the black box, in a word. But Leminsky, in a sense, it was like that piece in the puzzle that makes the pieces all fit together. The urban rock, from its sound to the silence of meditation, and Oriental cultures that he took great interest in, from the mundane, the worldly, in contact with the worldly and daily reality, and contact between the streets and the books, in a sense, and the contact with the books, the cultures, the West, all the way from the oldest references, his interest in Homer, Ovid, Sappho, Petronius. He translated Satyricon and the Eastern cultures which seduced him so much. The masters of Haikai, especially Basho, who wrote a biography on Basho Mishima, and more contemporary, to whom he translated Solliasso, Sun and Steel. In a sense, his interest in culture and philosophy, Oriental philosophy and culture, brought a bit of the aroma of the American beats, the beatniks, the beat generation, amongst whom Ferlinghetti, whom he also translated. It's funny that he wrote a biography on Basho. This issue of biographies is something that, in a sense, demonstrates the multiplicity of his gaze. He did a biography of Christ, Basho, and Cruz y Sosa, and Trotsky, all of them. Wildly diverse, pointing in very different directions. And all of this, in a sense, reveals the explosion of his interest and his multifaceted gaze that he displayed. He even translated an anthology of Egyptian poetry, which I was surprised me. Leminsky was Virgil like me, but in September he was from August. Virgil, August 24, which is the month of the mad dog, and he, in a sense, mentions this in this poem. Paulo Leminski is a mad dog who must be slain, burned, stoned, beaten dead with a stick. Sink him, or else the son of a bitch might make it rain all over a picnic. In a certain sense, in this poem, he winks like Torquato Neto. Torquato Neto talked about untuning the chorus of the contented people and reigning in a picnic of the contented, accommodated people. This poem reveals but several different facets, revealing also a combative aspect of his, always present. I always remember one of his expressions, a phrase in an essay. I believe that it was an essay from the critical essays, but I don't remember exactly where he said, okay, criticizing the backward thinking, the troglodytes and so forth. He said, there's always people who are against those who always want to destroy, take the cart before the oxen, right? And so I learned of his work before I met him in person. The first book that I read was Catatau, which I got as a gift from a friend. I think it was in the 1970s, in the late 1970s. And I was amazed because of this intense flow of insights and gushing out. My friend told me in the case, it's a book that you can open up on any page and just start reading it and to begin to read it, and it's always going to be, you're always going to be on the right page. It's always going to tell you something. And in fact, he is somewhat this open book, literally an open book in various different senses, but I wanted to read it in order, and I was seduced by the pace, the flavor of the poetic prose that he used, and I was, without understanding the plot quite very well, but grasped by those sonorous plays on words, paranomasia, networks of sounds, meanings, and syntactic subversions, the vocabulary inventions which referred back to galaxies from Arnaldo and Finnegan's Wake, which I had read partly in Finnegan's Wake, which is translated by Augusto de Campo and Haroldo de Campos, the concrete poets of Brazil. Haroldo and Augusto Campos, these surprises, linguistic surprises, in a sense, serve to portray the amazement, the Cartesian view in the savage world of the tropics. And many years later, I read Leminsky talking about Catatau, his first book, and he was making a comparison or in a reference, in a word, an association between this Cartesian view that comes from the traffics with the relationship, the reader's relationship to the book itself. I thought this was something conscientious on his part, that he was doing this. This is something incredible. And he said, it's new information. It's always, you don't understand. So it's not to understand. It's for you to be surprised constantly with each turn of the page, with each turn of the phrase, because at each moment, because there's no redundancy. That's the point, to look at Descartes and that life, a totally different life in the tropics, different from rationality, which would be expected. It's somewhat the reader's view reading Catatau. Afterwards, I read, the second book that I read by Leminsky was Were It Not This and It Would Be Less, Were It Not So Much and It Would Be Almost, which here it is. This book here, I was surprised trying to understand that the same author who had written that book, exuberant book, Catatau, radically experimental, which is Catatau, that he was capable also, in other words, that he would also write the poems that seduced me because of the synthesis and the conciseness and the command of the rhythms and sounds and incorporation of meanings through the form with an accent that was both delicate and brutal. All of this was evident in these poems that appeared like catharses. The graphic design of the book reinforces this somewhat. I'm talking about posters because he expanded and amplified what he'd written on the typewriter, and in a sense he explodes them in the page. And I think that's beautiful, this edition, and this was re-edited in Caprices and Relaxities, or Whims and Relaxations, without this graphic exuberance. To this date, it merits, and afterwards in All Poetry, more recently, in the anthology of his complete works, would merit a re-edition, a facsimile new edition, like this graphic design, which is beautiful. I think there are few people who have contacted this book because it was an edition done by Zap Editions from Curitiba, his hometown, and at the time there was no nationwide distribution of the book. So I'm going to show here a bit. It's beautiful. And after Leminsky died for several years, in Curitiba, his hometown, they held an annual event called Per Happiness, which is one of his expressions, per happiness, like perhaps and happiness, in a sense, paying tribute to Leminsky. And it was an event on poetry in general, but it was a tribute and homage to Paulo Leminski. And it always happened around his birthday, approximately at the time that we are now, but August 24th. And one of the times when I participated more than once, but one of the times that I participated in Curitiba, I wanted to do a performance relating to this book, and somewhat like doing a chaotic reading, kind of fragmented reading of his book, and kind of relating physically to him. And I wanted to repeat here, at least partly, but it's going to be difficult because there was a pedestal to use. And here there isn't one, but I'm going to do it anyway. Improvising somewhat. There's no pedestal. Okay. I never wanted to be a client. Thank you very much. Far, he said, goodbye, a little of everything. There are never three between inside, outside, just an essay, an assay. The night drips a star in my eye. It passes by. A master turns the globe and says, this is the world. That's how it is. You stop to see what awaits you. That eats your work like I eat this rubber. Who everything passes, the night, the plague, the winter, the summer, war, peace, everything passes. Your laughter reflects your song, a little bit of bad in every poem that teaches. If I knew that was how it is, I wouldn't have been born. I would never have known. This particular, the people, most of the majority of the people stayed. This and that, is that how it is? A poem on the page, child's bite in the ripe fruit. If I had known it was like that, no one is born knowing. The letter, the card from the deck, and the jack, the clean word, Olavo washes. I wake, sleep, I wake and sleep every day. Okay, that poem was not provided to the interpreters in advance. It's difficult to read it like that and difficult to translate. He was attaching one piece of the poem, and I was relating physically to the book because the graphic design is a poem. It's in one direction and another. But with a microphone, holding a microphone, it's difficult because I'm not able to gesture and gesticulation to stitch, and that's what I wanted to do, and splicing one fragment of the poem to another. So it was kind of chaotic with this book. But that was a tribute to Paulo anyway. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, that poem, that unlike the other poems, was not provided to the interpreters in advance. I remember that at that time, I read in this book a poem, and at the same time I heard a song, and I thought there was a kind of incredible synchronicity between the two. The poem is this one. I'm going to tell you.
Johnny, está me ouvindo?
Can you hear me, Johnny? Yes, yes, of course. Your mother and myself, we pardoned each other. This happens, of course. It happens to anyone. I said anyone. It's anyone. Can you hear me? Yes, we forgive you. I said your mother forgives you. Yes, you. Do you hear me now? Whatever it is, of course, everything is forgiven. Mothers always forgive everything. I said everything forgives. Yes, your mother and I. Your mother and I, never, Father, always forgives. I forgive you. Forgive me now. Go to sleep, my poor Johnny. Go to sleep. I said, I forgive you. Your mother forgives you. Now, Johnny, can you hear me? Johnny, can you hear me? And do you hear me? Yes, Johnny, can you hear me? I think this poem is enchanting. It has the verses in English, and at the same time, I loved a band called Five-Man Cannibals, and they launched Johnny Come Home, a song which I found that there was, this song is saying the same thing as Leminsky saying in that poem, and I thought this was incredible. I never commented this to Paulo after I met him in person, but I'm going to show you an excerpt of the song for you all here. So, in a word, I love this band. I was dazzled by the synchronicity. Did they read Paulo Leminski? Because the poem says it all. I don't know the exact date to the band song vis-a-vis the poem, but the song by Fine Young Cannibals is from 1985, an LP. So, at any rate, it's after the Leminsky's poem, but I began to read his poems from Alice in the poetry Código Muda, Artéria, Caspa, Colimica, Corpo Estranho, a foreign object that convened the countercultural scene of poetry in other languages as well, in other genres. I remember the first poem by Alice that I read in one of these journals. I was enraptured by that poem, which was a haikai, a very synthetic haikai. It's nothing in the belly and this blade, the razor, where Paulo was one of the editors in the journal Muda. I saw a photograph of him on the rocks with this poem that I just read before. Paulo Leminski is a mad dog. He was put on a photograph, over a photograph of Paulo, a young Paulo without his mustache, in the rocks with holding paper. And I looked at the credits. The photograph was by Augusto de Campos. Then I'd learned that he had published an invention that they had met, Invenção, this poetry journal in '63, in the first Vanguard poetry meeting in Belo Horizonte, when Augusto took this photograph of Leminsky, which was in the journal, and it made all the sense to me, as if the pieces fit together. And the puzzle, as when I learned of the approach between Augusto de Campos with Caetano Veloso, in a sense, or later Caetano recorded Verdura by Leminsky, as if it were a mosaic, that we understand the connections and links and how things that we groove on and dig connect to each other. This is awesome. Even before I met Paulo and Alice, there was at the time, he was married to Go, and there was a release, a launch. We were fans and loved, admired his poetry, their poetry, and there was a launch of a book. I think it was a joint release of a book by Paulo and Alice, and in São Paulo, and Go. I could not go because there was some kind of show or rehearsal or something, and Go went to the launch, and she did, I don't know if Alice remembers this, she did to give to Paulo and Alice rings out of paper. Go, she was very skilled and did handwriting and with paper rings with things written on the paper rings for both of them. I can't remember what she wrote on the ring for Paulo, but in that of Alice, she wrote noise and root, noise root. So it's one more first contact between us and them, not with me, but through Go. Yes. But I met finally in person Paulo and Alice. I can't remember when our first meeting was. It was probably around 1985 or 1986, something like that. But I remember having had huge empathy for him, connected. He was the kind of person that left you completely at ease immediately. That was a characteristic of his, and a special trait. It was delicious. It was so comfortable for you to contact him and approach him. You already felt welcomed by him and embraced. And I just launched my second book. Actually, the first one by a publishing house called Picia. And Paulo immediately, he had read the book and everything, and immediately he commented that I said, okay, he understood everything And he commented that the title was a compression, a condensation, like an abridgment of the word poetry, right? Which was one of the senses and meanings that I wanted to lend to the title, to this title. And I referred to this in the text that I did for the cover flap, One Less Hiatus. It was an author's edition, OA. It was an author's edition. And I said, one less hiatus. It means eliminating the OA and becoming poésie rather than poetry, but a reference to the title of OA, which is my first book. And the other meaning that I lent to the title, it was the feminine of psiu, which is what you do to ask people to be silent. Psiu. It's a interjection that refers to poetry. He immediately said that he commented on the book. It was great and cool, dope. He had this view, infallible view on the button, so to speak. And they invited us. We couldn't refuse the invitation. Myself and Go, my girlfriend at the time, I just launched Psia, and Go had launched a book, an author's edition, handwritten, called Sarrafos and Garranchos, which is a very like bars and claws, and it was an original format in this book. It's this one right here. I'm going to show you a little bit of it. Bars and scribbles. It's something you have to hold in your hands. Seeing it from the audience is kind of difficult. And I just launched Psia. It's a ellipse of poesia or poetry, and the cover was like this. And when it was re-edited by Illuminatus Publishing House, the cover changed, but we had launched these two books, and they invited us to launch together with them a joint release with the most recent books of theirs in Curitiba, at a bookstore in Curitiba, south of Sao Paulo, to stay at their home and everything. And of course it was wonderful. We went there, of course, to Curitiba. I remember that we stayed several days at their home. When we got there in the Pilarzinho neighborhood, when we got there, Leminsky was lying on this mat with his head on the sofa watching VHS films in VHS. Films in VHS, of course. We spoke and everything, but we continued to watch the film with him, and the film was over, and he said, let's watch another one, he said. So he said, there's a sensational film by Sam Peckinpah, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, by Sam Peckinpah. And we began to watch Peckinpah's film. It's a Far West with Bob Dylan with the soundtrack, wrote the soundtrack. And Dylan had a bit role in the film also. We watched the film together. It was over. It was 3 in the morning, and we got there in the early evening. It was already in the evening, and we were watching this film and watched the second film. When the second film was over, it was 3 in the morning, and Paulo, insatiable in that indefatigable way, he said, let's watch another one. He said, this at 3 in the morning. We said, okay, that's plenty. We're going to rest. He watched the third film himself until the day dawn. So, of course, we met his Leminsky family, Áurea Estrela, and we stayed several days. We visited the Neo-Pitagorical by Dario Veloso, and he introduced us to several different bars and restaurants in Curitiba, and we took tours, and we launched together our books, It was a great occasion. Everything was very intense, right? And afterwards, several times, we hosted them in our apartment in São Paulo, which is on the Avenida Paulista and Consolação, the two avenues of the Belas Artes movie house. And I remember them coming, and Paulo came with a leather jacket. He put Sex Pistols on the record player, doing a cultural review of everything that was happening. And he played his songs on the guitar. He had kind of brutal way of playing the guitar, like incorporating this punk spirit. Okay, now, I've already done my performance, but it's great anyway. Sometimes I want to hold the paper. Thank you very much. That's great. Performance I did, it got by. If I had known, I would have asked for the microphone, the stand before. So in one of these visits, we composed together a song. It was the only partnership I have with Leminsky, where I composed it together with him. I did another partnership posthumously, which was a song called ICU, which was recorded by a band called Clinic, by my friend and partner as well, Fernando Saling at the time. The band is called Clinica or Clinic. It's the lyrics are by him that I wrote the music to, but we wrote it four hands, basically. This is how it goes. Let me see, I need the lyrics and the words. I have them here somewhere. Hello, hello. You there in this ICU, you in the ICU, you're all standing, you're surrounded. Hold hands and stoop. There are no tricks. Don't try any tricks on us. Stand up, everybody out in the courtyard. 7 doubts, euthanasia, otherwise tell like hello, all of you in the courtyard, everyone in the courtyard 7. That was it, and he repeated it. Singing, telling patients in the ICU to stand up and go out into the hospital courtyard. Okay, so we invited, I say, the Titans, my band at the time, the Titans or Titans, we just recorded. Jesus has no teeth in the toothless country. Paulo was going to write the release for the album, and we took him to the studio, the recording studio. It was kind of funny because he came to the studio, and he said, "Let me play your guitar." He took Belotto's guitar and started playing. Belotto, the guitar player, everybody loved him, and he did an incredible release, that I'd like to read for you as well, called "Savage Consciousness versus Savage Capitalism." They were preparing an album. Arnaldo took me to the studio to take the first shocks and fears and frights firsthand. I played along the way, and the dinosaur's head you demolished with 5 pillars from the social order: police, the state, church, family, and savage capitalism. Now the time has come for you to begin to demolish things from within. And it was they were already doing, these demolishing forces. Rock, with the babble of the Dado Shanta. Rock, is this rock? The Titans are what are left of rock. Their lyrics are what are left of a bankrupt country, a vice-governant, vice-happy, vice-versa country. This, parenthetically, it was the time, it was during the Sarney government here in Brazil. In the 80s, the intact force of what they said of rock, this music done by the incompetents for the helpless. The day that rock becomes Pink Floyd in luxury, Pink Floyd Deluxe, rest in peace, rock and roll. But there are a lot of subtle meanness in the false elementary rhythms of the Titans in this Toothless Jesus, minimal marking for addiction, almost written like diversion, haunted by citations of Roberto Carlos. The melodic lines of this album attend to a minimal multiple commonplace, more rarefied than some cantables of the dinosaur's head. The development of the lyrics tend towards a basicness that everyone who wants love and food are shocking samples. The Titans, in a word, ever since dinosaurs head, at least they've detonated the real music of the country, in addition to the nitpicking of the so-called national rock. Lyrics that are still stuck in the sublime in the old sense. The lyricism, quote-unquote rock, which is from lip service for the girlfriend's ear. There's no noble vocabulary or poor vocabulary. Who taught them? Talks about flies, toothlessness, the government apparatus, collages, indiscriminate collages of words from the daily life, like the headlines in a newspaper, graffiti, political slogans in the individual plane, atomized, urbanized, and isolated. This atomization reaches its peak in the name of the cattle, a list of characters, dictators, tyrants, Pinochet, Mussolini, Plínio Salgado, voices and freedom without verses, with no verb to support them, in addition to a sinister climate of violence, institutionalized violence, the most radical lyrics of the album. That was his gift, this release, again, not provided in advance to the interpreter. It is at this time as well, in one of these visits to São Paulo, of them, Alice and Paulo, I'm going to show, he gave me as a gift a poem, handwritten poem, which he thought that had something to do with my own poetry, and so I'm going to read it to you and to show it to you here. Just a second. It's kind of yellowed and tattered with time. The poem said, in my exile, I exist, my former child, my trance is tranquil. I think that this thing of extracting the prefix from the word exile and the prefix from trance, from tranquil, he associated perhaps this was something from my own poetry, which I think has to do. But I discovered that there was another poem in the back cover, so I did this frame here. I made this frame that you can read and see also the poem in back, which is a duel between me and her turning over us. Okay, this, I keep it with me very affectionately on my wall in my home. We spent a New Year's together. Alice probably remembers this. I think it was in Branco Melo's home, but I'm not certain of that. I was reading Honório de Barros, Marcos, and Branco, various different friends, and I wanted to refer to this because Paulo Leminski came to this New Year's party giving gifts to people, poems of his. I don't know if they were handwritten as well or typewritten. His most recent poems that he had written, he came in and gave them as gifts, New Year's gifts, giving people these poems as gifts on New Year's. This, to me, is an example of how he lived poetry, because poetry, it's not something, the creation, in a word, in poetry and prose and arts in general, it's not something to comment on life. It's a manifestation of life. And poetry, and Leminsky understood that this better than anyone else. He truly lived poetry, not commented on poetry. This mixture of poetry and life, and creation, constantly. There's one of his poems that I'm going to read here, which in a sense expresses exactly that. Windmill of verses moved by the breeze in bohemian nights. A day will come when whatever I say will be poetry. So, in 1987, when he launched Distracted We Will Win, I was startled because he included me in the dedication to the book. Distracted We Shall Overcome, towards Alice in this crime against life called poetry, to Antonio Cícero, Arnaldo, Antunes, and especially for Itamar Assunção. I was flattered, of course, with that gesture by him, because he didn't do that kind of gesture at random. It was no small thing, right? I know that we did several shows with the Titãs in Curitiba, and he always, whenever we went to do a show with my band Titãs, he had these wonderful lunches, gathering friends, groups of friends, not only the Leminsky family, but Joseliviana Batista, Maria and Guy, João Vermont, Lou. It was a big family, and afterwards, in the evening, everyone went to watch the show, the concert. It was wonderful to go to Curitiba and get together with this gang again. And then a few meetings after that with him, when he was already separated from Alice, living in São Paulo. I remember that he loved Sujinho. It's called the prostitute's bar, which I think in a sense reminded him of the palace in Curitiba, the Palacio Bar, which had a somewhat similar, the Palacio Bar, these tile walls, the Palacio Bar, something like that in Curitiba. But there were few years of contact, but that I truly miss. He's one of these kinds of people. Leminsky is one of these people who we miss. We're missing in the cultural scene. He leaves a hole, not just how we miss him individually in our hearts, but in the cultural scene. He's missing. He leaves a gap, like Wally Salomão, Décio Pignatário, Adolfo de Campos, Cássia Eller, Itamar Assunção, José Celso. These are these holes that are left. After he died in 1989, I dedicated a poem to him, which I think is the first poem that I dedicated to somebody. I had never written a poem dedicated to someone, to the memory of Paulo Leminski. I'm going to read it here to you. In a sense, it reflects my own admiration for what I said, the way that he mixed life and poetry, and how this also bothered the conventional standards. It's a kind of ABC of Paulo Leminski. Poetry, life outside autographs, outside biography, life outside handwriting, life outside discography, life outside ethnography, life outside photography, life outside geography, life outside holography, life outside iconography, life outside legal writing, out of logographic, out of monograms, outside of nomograph, outside of spelling, outside pornography, life outside chirography, life outside radiography, life outside silkscreen, life outside telegraph, life outside urography, life outside videography, life outside block print, outside zoography, life undo life. Well, afterwards, I had a partnership or collaboration, a posthumous collaboration with him, which I recorded in one sound that I recorded in 1998. It's called, in addition, Beyond the Soul. Beyond the Soul. It was a poem that I wrote the music to, and I'm going to read the poem and sing the song for you, in a sense, as a contribution to this discussion. It's so boring sometimes, whether lyrics, musical lyrics are or not poetry. This may illustrate this false dichotomy somewhat. Beyond Soul, 1 gram later. My heart from afar sends a sign that it wants to come back. In the chest I bring in bronze. There's no place, or what good does a business do me that doesn't stop beating? It looks like a clock which has just gone crazy. What do I want? For people to weep, to be misunderstood, and the void, the vacuum that drops softly on me. And the song was like this. Now singing the same lyrics.
Meu coração lá de longe faz sinal que quer voltar. Já no peito trago em bronze, não tem vaga nem lugar. Pra que me serve negócio que não cessa de bater? Mas me parece relógio que acaba de enlouquecer. Pra que eu quero quem chora, se eu estou tão bem assim? E o vazio que vai lá fora cai macio dentro de mim.
So in 1999, when 10 years had gone by since Paulo died, I wrote a text at the request of the literary supplement to the state cultural division of the state of Minas Gerais. It was a great literary supplement. They asked me for something that I write something about him. I think this summarizes my own impressions of Paulo Leminski, so I'll read it to you now. For a literary supplement in the state of Minas Gerais, commemorating the 10th year after his death. Life heard. It's been 10 years that Leminsky is gone. 10 years fly by, and the lack that he makes as a creator, agitator, and friend is taken ground. Time is delighted with each rereading of his books. Time is dilated. Leminsky continues to surprise us. New messages reach us little by little, alive. Metamorphosis, for example, for me is a bath, amazement, something in Catatal because of its density, a mixture of rigor and peak, lost and found of a breath of life that never stops from the beginning to the end, and unclassifiable in terms of a genre, narrative or reflection, poem in prose or essay, fiction or didactic text. Impressive because of the fact that it was not published while he was still alive, which in a sense reveals the doubts that are always so present in Leminsky concerning the real value of each of his creations and of each of his offspring. I cite some of his verses where he says, "Everything that I do, someone embodied that I despise always thinks it's great." And this surprises cut across La Vie en Close, Winter Vern, as surprising and continuing to re-surprise us as caprices and catatau lives, distracted polonaises we will overcome, the critics that's manifest and etc., both and so many. If it were not for, and it was almost. Leminsky debated the borders between art and life. His utopia came in every day when everything that I said is poetry. If deep attachment, loving attachment to the word, a thirst for water and fire to the tone of much of what he produced, it puts us in an intimacy, conspirational intimacy. It's uncommon, as if they winked between the lines, identifying always something in common. This belief that each reader was an accomplice, a partner, appears to have fed his personal accent into his poetry or prose, exercising naturalness, the same two sides of the same coin. The slang, the colloquial expressions, the sparks of contraculture living side by side with or without clashes, with the constructivist rigor, the awareness of language, and the precision and synthesis learned in haikais, in Zen, in Judo. First of all, a poet, his restlessness led him to venture into popular music, prose, and essays, in translations, in graphisms, in visual poetry, in journalism, in video or movie screens, in journal editions, as Torquato Nequit, who untuned the chorus of the contents while he made people rain on the picnics, on our picnic, and others of his generation. Whether he belongs to the numbers lived too much, who would write in the poem Crowns for Torquato. Or perhaps these modalities, all of them were just other ways that he practiced poetry, according to second by second, inspiration by expiration. He had to take the bull by the horns. He had to shake the person, take them by their stomach. Olava with his typewriter. Each lyric is a kiss, a shot, a challenge, a desire. For him, it was life or life. One way, the Cruz de Souza, Jesus, Béchot, Trotsky didn't write poetry to comment on life, but to be alive. If it were not for that, and it was less. Now, 10 years after he has been gone, let's live him. Okay, there are several more things for me to read, which in 2014 I did the preface to a children's book, which called The Alphabet Beast. And it's funny that it's like there's a timeline, a descending timeline in books that were published. Catatau is like an adult, an elderly adult already, and now agora que são elas, it's like a younger adult. The war within is a teenager, and finally, childhood, which is the alphabet beast. I'm going to read, it's a short poem. I'm going to read the preface that I wrote for this book, which has the illustrations by Zeraldo. The alphabet beast can appear harmless, but it's dangerous when it becomes language. The alphabet beast, the more so when language is twisted onto itself to become poetry. The alphabet beast is always the same. The ways of use it that change. Paulo Leminski plays with words, with meanings and forms of words as if he turned their lights on. And we are subject to trips and choking, short circuits, amazement, and obfuscation. It's that his poetry reveals what appears that we already knew, but we didn't know that we knew. And the robin is just an accent from knowing and robins, the smoothness and the smoothness of versus the slug or we don't identify in the word not identifying the word letters in the stars letter, one rain on another. We don't recognize in the night the high writing, in the low moon, a disordering that reorders more naturally, things more naturally. Leminsky knew it's clear as day that the ship says taking us to another edge of the river, that of language, and the banks of the river where the alphabet beast is even more savage than before. And his sparks gave ammunition for Arnaldo to illustrate, showing that he has the color beast which can converse with the alphabet beast so intimately that even the white piece of paper makes sense, a white sheet of paper. The beasts are loose, and on the loose. And the last thing that I'm going to read is a commentary, a very short commentary that I wrote. Because in this, rather, 2012, that's the right year, there was a Paulo Leminski exhibit that I visited. I thought it was amazing. I was blown away. Alicia curated and Aurea Estrela curated the exhibit. The exhibit covered various different areas of his production, but what charmed me the most was the notebooks of scribbles, handwritten works, the notebooks where he showed the process of his writing, his creative process. It was unveiled there and unbared, and I was charmed by the manuscripts. This exhibit was successful. It visited 18 cities in 12 years, and at the time that they held the exhibit, they asked me for a small commentary that I wrote. I'm going to read it to you here. Okay. The exhibit, the Leminski exhibit, shows the underground bridges between the intimate person and the public figure of an artist who attempted to make life and work one single thing. His friendships and his studies, his songs and his partnerships, the graffiti and judo, the translations, the essays, the Zen and ancient Greece culture and counterculture, the notebooks with the photographs, the videos. It's all there in the exhibit with great skill and, of course, relaxation, whims with stars without Aurea. Only Aurea and Estrella could true present for people who love Paulo's work, even more for people like me that met him in person and who miss him, like myself. An initiation, attractive initiation for people who still not had contact with this work from this incredible poet of our own time and of all times in history. And so in 2013, when Companhia das Letras published his anthology in this one single volume in all poetry, they asked me to record a poem by Paulo, which is Counter Narcissus, to do a video, for a publicity video. It was a great video for publicizing the book with people wearing Paulo's mustache in the street. Everybody had a mustache on this demonstration. I wanted to reread this. This reading of this poem was included in a recording of a young Curitiba band, contemporary band called Young Dionysus. And the name of the song is Strolling in His Way. They asked for authorization, of course, Paulo's family and for myself to include this, and I thought the song was great, and I thought it was great to include that song. So it cut across one purpose, which was to do a video, a publicity video, to launch the book, to another one, which is to enter once again into the music, as so many times Paulo entered into. So I'm going to tell you Counter Narcissus. In myself, I see the other, and another, and another. Ultimately, dozens, trains passing, wagons full of people, hundreds of cousins. The other, who's there in me, is you, you, and you. Just as I am in you, I am in him and in us. And only when we're on our own will we be at peace, even if we're alone. I'm going to conclude here my talk, sing a song by Paulo that I recorded, which is Lights, Luzes in Portuguese. And it's a song by Paulo, although people thought that it was a partnership or collaboration by us, like verdura, vegetables. This is a song by Paulo. Some people think it was collaboration with Caetano, but Caetano recorded it. This song, the lyrics and music both are by Paulo Leminski. And Luzes, Lights, my recording was included. It's in the album, recorded live in the studio. It was included in the film, this beautiful film that Cao Guimarães produced and directed on Catatau, this movie version of Catatau, his first book, which I think this film is beautiful. And included this recording in the soundtrack for that film. Okay, so I'm going to conclude by singing to you all. Light the lamp at 6 p.m. Light the light of the oil lamps and the flame of the salons, languages, dragons, tongues, fireflies, in a swarm and cloud of neon dust. Everything is clear. Everything is clear and light and night. That's good. The light lit in the window there at home. The fire. The light in the alley, a beacon. This night, there will be sun. Tonight, there will be sunlight. Light the lamp at 6 o'clock. Light the light of the oil lamps. Light the fire of the ballrooms, fairies and dragons' tongues, fireflies, in a cloud of neon dust. Everything is light. Everything is light at night. That's good. The light lit in the window there at home. The fire. The light in the alley and a beacon. Tonight there will be sunlight. Tonight there will be sunlight. Tonight there will be sunlight. Sun.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you. Long live Paulo.
Acenda a luz dos lampiões, inflame a chama dos salões, fogos de línguas de dragões, vagalumes